have a rudimentary knowledge of the trade her husband would receive from her in marriage?" she'd asked. It seemed if she spoke of matrimony one day in the future, it was enough for Mamma to acquiesce and allow her visits to the mill. Relishing the opportunity, Elizabeth would slip away from Papa's office as soon as they passed through the carriage-clogged streets along the Ashton Canal. While he oversaw operations, she could move about as a ghost in the mill's hidden corners and shadowed halls, sketching what she wished. There she'd fill endless pages with a fervor. Images of workers, their faces soot-smudged, weary and lined. The contrast of carding machines, clawing back and forth like cast-iron beasts, and cotton fluffs that danced about in the air like snow. Pack horses trudged through the cobblestone courtyard, pulling shabby carts. Workmen muscled wares onto them, and all the women seemed to cough as they hurried by, their faces gaunt, and clothing hanging off their thin frames until they looked like specters drifting on a breeze. Once Elizabeth had hidden behind a stack of crates to sketch one of the scavengers, a small boy employed to clean out the machinery, and after, she questioned her papa as to why children her age were set upon to work at all. When did they receive schooling? And whilst the machines were running, they continued working. Was that not dangerous?
"Do not worry over such trifles," he'd said. "It is beneath your station."
Elizabeth was clever, with a keen eye and a sharp pencil. He'd admit that.
"But shouldn't you focus on pleasant things? England's rich landscape and our life in it. Why fret over the wretched plight of the worker?"
If that was pleasant, Elizabeth didn't want it. She wanted real. There was a world of it now to be found in just a few London blocks. Their carriage sat in the midst of it, she waiting while Papa went about business, blissfully sketching what could be a true member of the grit and grime in London's underbelly. Elizabeth pressed pencil to page, flitting her glance up and down, outlining the street urchin's strong jaw and broad shoulders upon a lithe frame, and shading the fall of shadows around him. She waited for the rare tip of the man's hat that might move the light just so, allowing her to capture the combination of street smarts and brash in his face. All the while he kept the walking stick, tap, tap, tapping against his boot. As if reading her thoughts, the figure stilled the cane, the army of snowflakes the lone movement around his silhouette. He seemed to have discerned a gaze rested upon him, as without warning he shifted his attention up to the carriage. To her. Their gazes locked for the briefest of moments, enough that Elizabeth held back a gasp. He was young, no more than 20, and owned a pair of eyes in a rare and piercing stone gray, the left iris nearly halved by a jagged vertical line of bright golden brown that cut from top to bottom. He seemed to understand their color was a rarity, so he broke away and tucked again under the top hat brim. Elizabeth turned back to the page, wishing she'd brought her colored pencils to capture the intensity in his eyes, but continued sketching his face without them. She could add the contrast of hues later. A ferocious crack awakened her from the spark of inspiration. She jolted upright, snapping her gaze to the street. The top hat urchin had vanished. He was replaced by shrieking ladies and passers-by who recoiled in the gaslight's glow. The horses lurched, jostling the carriage, as Elizabeth tried to discern what the commotion was. She gripped a gloved hand to the window frame, fingertips battling to steady her. And then there was a man, falling. A cloaked figure absorbed what was assuredly a second gunshot, fired from the alley shadows, then staggered back to hit the pavement in a dead flop. With the man's riding boots having fallen limp in the center of the pavement, crowds tripped to get out of the way. And she watched in horror as her papa lay motionless on the ground. No! Elizabeth flung the coach door open, uncaring if it caused the horses to bolt. She jumped down and ran, nearly turning her ankle on cobblestones as she pushed her way through the crowd. "Lady Elizabeth!" Kinsley, their coachman, bellowed to her from behind. She glanced back, seconds only, to see he worked to calm the fright out of the beasts in harnesses. Run. It was the only charge.